Is it?
Welcome back to the Fitness League, helping busy humans build strong bodies, sharper minds, and better lives. Join us each week as we cut through the noise, challenge the norms, and empower you to train smarter and live stronger. What are your thoughts on circuit workouts with short rest periods? Can you still build muscle? Is it okay to focus on the same muscle during the circuit? Also, have you ever inhaled the smoke out of opening an element packet and choked on it?
We were just talking about Element before we hit record. I kid you not, every single time I open my Element, even when I'm preparing for it to open, I choke on it. Like it puffs up and goes right into my nostrils and I choke on it no matter what I do every time.
You know it's coming.
I'm gonna make a really funny confession for anyone that has ever seen my like 5 a.m. whisper, hey, we're up, we're at 'em, we're doing it tired stories. Sometimes I have to chop that up into pieces because I pour my Element in, the smoke comes, and then I'm choking and dying on it, and I crop that out, and then so if you ever see if you ever see edits and cuts in that morning story, that's why.
Now you
Weird,
know.
that seemed like a hard cut in that story.
Oh man. All right. Well, circuit workouts.
Circuit workouts. I think there's different frameworks for this because I will say they're not circuit workouts, but like when I program Evolve Hybrid with the purpose of condensing time, like we'll go biceps, we'll go supersets and trisets. So like we might do triceps, biceps, shoulders, and like completing that with a lateral raise so that the prior muscle isn't impacted. Anytime we can do opposing muscle groups to condense time on those upper or lower split workouts, it does help quite a bit. So it's, we talk about this ideal in quotations all the time. It's not ideal to stack them like that if we're going for maximum strength, maximum hypertrophy. But honestly, what percentage are you compromising? 10%, 5%, a very minimal amount versus, getting a full 2-minute rest in between all sets. But at that point, how adherent are you to those longer workouts? So it's pick your poison, really. Unless you have the capacity to spend your day working out and like that is your job, we have to compromise in some aspect or another. It might be a half an hour less of sleep. It might be a little bit less cardio, one less cardio day per week. There's always going to be something. So the answer, can you still build muscle? Absolutely. You can still build strength. Absolutely. I saw some fantastic gains when I was still doing Evolve Hybrid. I have transitioned back over to Physique. I've added that 5th day back in, but I saw some awesome progress with that because I was consistent. And when I was doing these, I was even shortening them further than I prescribed them. I was getting these done, some of them in 22 minutes, a lot of them averaging closer to 30 minutes, like right in that 20 to 30 minute window. I was progressing strength every single week. Oftentimes I was also doing this fasted. I would just wake up, drink an Element, and just get into the gym because that's what I needed to do. What was that? Choke on an Element. I think that's the secret. You actually absorb it faster when you breathe it in. So you just snort it like cocaine.
Yeah, yep. We're just going to start snorting them.
Absolutely. And then the last part of that was, is it okay to focus on the same muscle during the circuit? That's not ideal. You might do that for something like if you want to get a burner, so really get the pump going and use it strategically. I wouldn't do that all the time, but let's say you're doing like a bench, like maybe a dumbbell bench press and then like a cable fly, and then you take a little more time on the rest period. That's not a circuit. That's a superset, but that's just my quick perspective. You guys differ at all?
No, I would say avoid keeping the same muscle groups, at least in a back-to-back. Like if I'm thinking of a full-blown circuit, it might be 5 or 6 different exercises. I would avoid having like 2 leg exercises back-to-back. I think they could still be in the same circuit, but different, spaced out so they're not consecutive.
Have you guys ever done PHA circuits, peripheral heart action? So you actually toggle, you go upper, then lower, then upper, then lower throughout the workout. Make your heart work a little harder, pumping up, pumping down, filling different groups. That was something we learned about in NASM.
Good old NASM. No, I've never done that. But yeah, I agree with everything you guys said. Sometimes I'll, especially now that I'm powerlifting, my workouts are a little bit longer. So for my accessory lifts, like the lifts at the end of the workout, I'll kind of group them as a circuit just to get through it faster. But yeah, it's everything else I agree with.
All right, take it away, Chief.
I'm reading them now.
Yeah, we just do it the other way so I can plug the intro real quick.
Okie dokie. All right. Katie asked us, she said, "Good morning. My question is more so related to healthy eating for kids. I eat a relatively healthy diet: eggs, yogurt, protein shakes, chicken, and beef. And I'm a huge fan of salads and veggies. I also do the sweet treats every once in a while. I have a 2.5-year-old, and while he eats great at daycare, according to his daycare provider, for example, he always eats his protein and veggies and all of his fruit. At home with me, he is an incredibly picky eater, even if he's served the same foods. My husband and I have found that he is constantly begging for mini muffins, ice cream, or crackers, which were introduced to him at grandma's house. We can get him to eat fruit, but I feel like I'm at my wit's end with trying to get him to make healthier options at home. I always offer what we're eating on his plate with the safe food, quote unquote." And then she just went on to say she's not sure what the disconnect is. They've done therapy. She just feels like she's at a loss here. I'll start off by saying I feel like 2.5 is a rough age to like you can't make them do anything at 2.5. Like, they have enough awareness to say no. They argue a lot. They're testing the boundaries. Like, there's probably a lot of that going on, if I had to guess. But Joelle, what are your thoughts as somebody who recently had a 2.5-year-old and almost has another 2.5-year-old?
Yeah. So you're definitely in this kind of interesting position because you also have daycare kids, Katie, and it resonates because sometimes things are also served at school. My first thought, you had mentioned that like some of those foods were introduced at grandma's house. I also wonder if kids are like bringing those types of snacks to school too. And so he like sits there and he has his healthy lunch, but maybe other kids at school have those muffins and mini muffins and whatever else. And then he comes home kind of like wanting those things because he's not getting them during the day. In my house, personally, when my kids want something that's not on the menu, that's exactly what I tell them. I say that's not on the menu tonight. Case in point, Sloan, we have ice cream in our freezer. Sloan asked for ice cream last night and I said, that's just not on the menu tonight. Why, you know, why can't we have it? We had it yesterday. I'm like, yeah, we did. Different things are on the menu different nights. Reese wanted mac and cheese tonight. Mac and cheese wasn't on the menu tonight. Here's what's on the menu tonight. This, or this. And they do have options and they could pick from those options. I think for me, the biggest things that I've learned is that amongst this age of independence, around 2 and 3 years old, they do love to have options and they do love to feel in control. So sometimes I'll compromise, not in like, okay, fine, you can have the mini muffins, or like, okay, fine, you can have the ice cream, because as soon as you start to break that boundary, they're like, oh, okay. So now I have learned if I do whine and annoy mom enough, I will get what I want. So I think it is important to kind of like hold that boundary. If you say no, say no. There's plenty of other things that you can say yes to that don't have to be a no. But if you feel strongly about like, no, you're not having ice cream for dinner, then it's simply not on the menu tonight. But here's what is on the menu. We could do this or we could do this. And sometimes I'll even like go as far as to write it down on a piece of paper, which sounds so silly because they can't even read and they don't even know what they're looking at. But I've gone as far as to like make a menu on a piece of paper, rip it in half, and like, here's one menu, here's one menu. Which menu should we do tonight, Sloan? Which menu should we do tonight, Reese? Okay, who wants to pick the fruit for tonight? Who wants to pick the fruit that we're doing with dinner? I do. Okay, should we do strawberries or blueberries tonight? Okay, and what about our protein source? Should we do chicken meatballs or chicken nuggets tonight? Okay, now they get to pick that. So I think instead of saying all the things you can't have, I try to redirect into the things that they can have and give them choice about the things that are on the menu tonight. So that's kind of my default. I know it's really tough, and I know we've talked about this before, of it's tough when there's other foods that are being exposed at, you know, grandma and grandpa's house. I don't think my kids even like knew what an Oreo was until they had a sleepover at Mima and Papa's, and now they like,
Damn it.
it's back to our house. Can I have a bag of Oreos to bring home? And I'm like, it's fine. Like for me, it's not an all the time thing. Mm-hmm. And I think it's helpful to remember, especially with our toddlers, that your kids are the product of what they do, what they consume, and how active they are, for instance, most of the time. Not all of the time, just like adults. Just like when we indulge in ice cream, it's not something that we're doing every single day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but we as humans are a product of what we do most of the time, not all of the time. So I think you're likely being a little bit hard on yourself. Like toddlers are a little bit feral, and it helps to give them choice when they want to be independent, but it also is important to hold that boundary. So It's
We
just
also
kind
need
of
to
finding
remember
that
too,
balance.
like we're not gonna have eyes on them 24/7. Like especially if they are going to school. My dad brought up to me, he's like, you know, if they can't have these things, the moment that they're out of sight, they're gonna be wanting to take all this. Go eat this, go eat that. He's like, look at your cousin. He talks about my cousin. He's like, his mom didn't let him have any sugar ever, and now like anytime he disappears, like it's to go pound a bag of sugar. Our kids are already not to that extent because we do practice that balance, but we also practice, you know, giving them the option to show some restraint. So we'll have conversations, and if Kai does ask, you know, I know you have the not on the menu thing. I think that's really really cool, Joel, and it works great for Sloan and Reese. We'll do a similar approach, but a lot of times, like, do you want that, buddy? I'll ask Kai, and then like on his birthday party, we had donuts with breakfast. He was gonna have some more cake, obviously, with lunch or dinner, whenever that was gonna be with the party, and then he wanted some snack that wasn't ideal, like in the middle of the day. I'm like, well, let's think about that for a second. If we have sugar all day and these things, not to demonize sugar, but just for the sake of having this conversation, if we have these kind of choices all throughout the day, how do you think your tummy's gonna feel later? Like, should we make some more nutrient dense choices during the day now so we can have the fun stuff later? And this was a special occasion. Obviously, there was more going on that day, but we'll have that conversation all the time. And even when he's not at our house, even when I'm not there, he's talking to his friends or he's talking to my parents. Like, no, I think I'm good. I don't want that right now. Like, oh, I'd rather have, you know, I'll have some regular milk. I don't want chocolate milk, whatever it is. Nothing that's been demonized, but yeah, it's giving them the ability to flex that muscle and to kind of exercise that restraint and to show their ability to control that. So it's not just going to be on us, because otherwise they might be thrown to the wolves in a sense when we're all done.
Yeah, I think this
All right.
question stems a
All right,
lot
Joelle.
from her wanting to make sure that like her kid eats healthy, but also she wants him to have a healthy relationship with food, right? And that's something
Exactly.
we're all trying to do. And so finding that balance is really important. The other thing that I was going to add just as a tool that we use is pairing a non-nutrient dense thing with a nutrient dense thing. So like the other day, someone got munchkins for a play date that we had, and Sloan, the next day we like brought the munchkins home. The next day she wanted munchkins for breakfast. And I said, we can have a munchkin with breakfast if we pair it with something else, because a munchkin's not going to keep our tummy full. So let's pair it with something that will help to keep our tummy full and give us energy for the day. And so let's pick a protein source. You want eggs with breakfast, you want eggs with your munchkin, you want some turkey with your munchkin. And she chose whatever, you know, protein options I gave her, and she picked one of those. And she was then allowed, quote, to have her munchkin with that other thing. So I would say that's just another helpful tool of like pairing foods to kind of help with what Josh was talking about, of giving them the tools and the knowledge of like, hey, it's not that we can't have this, it's that we might not feel the best, or we might be hungry later, or our tummy might hurt later. So what could we pair with it that might help our tummy feel a little bit more full for school today?
Love it.
Hey guys, real quick. If you've been listening and thinking, I need to start doing something for my health, but I don't have time for a full program, that is literally why we built the SDE Method app. It's a fitness app made for real people with real lives. Busy parents, working professionals, anyone juggling 100 things. You can get in, get a smart, effective workout in around 30 minutes, some even closer to 20 minutes, and log out knowing you made progress. You can finally take the guessing out of your workouts. We have workouts designed to be done at the gym or at home, and you get access to all of them when you sign up. As life phases change, you can pick a new one that aligns better with what you have going on right now. And one more thing, we are also qualified for HSA FSA reimbursement. So just hit the app link in the show notes, start where you are, we'll help with the rest. All right, let's get back to the show.
All right, moving on. Tyla said she wanted to let you, Josh, Alessandra, and Joelle know that I look forward to new episodes each week. I've gained so much from listening and following you all over the years. I know that it's important to push RPE to 8 or 9 on lifts to get stronger and build muscle, but what about form and technique? Is it better to hit a lower weight in perfect form or technique, or is one more important than the other, essentially? I feel like we've touched on this
I actually
quite
feel
a
like this
bit.
was maybe on our last Q&A episode, something along those lines. I think someone had asked about,
It was
Right.
range of motion, right? Range of motion or weight.
maybe that was it. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, both are going to be really important. Form and technique absolutely do matter. Lower weight and perfect form versus, form getting sloppy and increasing the weight. I think Josh put this really well when we talked about it last time. Probably depends on the lift a little bit. If we're talking about something more technical, a compound lift, a squat, a bench press, a deadlift, we want to be as close to pretty perfect as we can with form and technique because we don't want to end up in a position where we're getting injured. Something like a bicep curl or a preacher curl, or we're sitting on a machine, the likelihood of injury is a lot lower because we are kind of in that fixed range of motion. So I would say if you were, doing a leg extension where like your form can't really get that sloppy, but the weight's getting heavy, maybe you're doing partial reps, like that's probably fine in those last few reps to really push it. But in something that is going to be a compound lift, like Alessandra, you're probably a great example of with your powerlifting right now. You're probably not upping the weight a whole lot if you're already starting to notice your form break at a specific weight because you are throwing around heavy weight and you don't want heavy weight on top of a poor foundation.
Yeah. And I think it's important to remind you guys too, like there's no such thing as perfect form. It's what's ideal for you individually and like based on your anatomy for your body. Like it's going to be a little bit different. Like we talked about this too, like Joelle squatting versus my squatting looks completely different if we were to squat next to each other because she has long as shit legs and a small torso and I'm a little bit more equal when it comes to those two things. So it's going to result in a different looking squat. But you guys know, I think we all kind of can feel when form starts to break down. I think at least if you've been lifting for at least a year or two, you know when form is starting to suffer. So just really kind of be extra in tune on those compound lifts. And when you start to notice it take a hit, then just either stay at that same weight next week, or if you have to dial it back to improve your form, dial it back a little bit. But yeah, ultimately it is going to just depend on the lift. All right. Danielle said, new here. I've been working with Coach Haley for a few weeks now, and I'm absolutely loving Levolution. Thanks for caring about health at a fundamental level. 2 questions. How do you guys deal with a negative mindset? I know Josh meditates, but being a mom of a toddler and one on the way, quiet time is next to not available, and I love it for all of you, but 5 a.m. is not in it for me, much like Joelle and cold plunges. So how do we deal with a negative mindset?
Well, let me jump on the meditation real quick. There is this incorrect, I'll call it, thought that we have to be in this quiet room in the dark, go the Aaron Rodgers route and meditate in a cave for 4 days. One of the best things you can do is do this in the middle of chaos, a construction zone, your living room, whatever that looks like.
The toddler chaos.
The toddler chaos. And just focus on your breath. Like you can do it with your eyes open, watching your kids, but focus on your breath all the way in, all the way out. That is still meditation. It's not getting to this enlightenment and hearing nothing and seeing nothing. Meditation is actually just being aware of your surroundings and staying mindful, staying in the present moment. So the idea is strengthen in these situations where there's a ton of distraction because it's more weight. It's a heavier bar to squat. We're focusing on the breath. Someone drops something. A toy explodes. Someone starts screaming. We're looking around. We're making sure everyone's safe, but we continue to follow that breath all the way in, all the way out, being aware, hearing all the things, seeing all the things, but we're just kind of calming the internal dialogue. We're also going to be building additional resilience in this route because we're not thinking, okay, that just broke, now I'm really mad. We're enhancing the time or increasing the time between something happening and our response to it. That reactivity we're reducing. So you might not even need to think about it as meditation, but just sit in the chaos, watch your kids running around, the toddler and the one on the way when they are finally here, and just be there. Try not to think anything, just absorb. And that is still meditation.
In her second question, she said, how do you develop more discipline? I know the right things to do, but I'm not doing them. Like Josh always says, it's not just a willpower thing, right? We touched on this a little bit on Mondays, or I guess today's episode that dropped. So Tuesday's episode, if you're listening to this. But we can definitely quick hitter again, discipline.
Having that North Star, that's something that has been my enlightenment, is this is my purpose. All of my decisions are revolved around getting to this thing. I mean, literally everything. So when we talk about our North Star right now, making the world a happy, healthy place, project be on the way. But even with family, how am I raising my kids to be kind and compassionate and strong and healthy and leaders, and being able to continue this change, whether they're taking over our business when we're buried 6 feet deep, or they just take their own path, blaze their own trail, and make the world a better place in some other aspect. That is the question I'm always asking. How is this impacting that journey? And that's the willpower thing. That's the motivation. That's the discipline. It's a muscle like everything else, like we just talked about with meditation. But if we have that underlying purpose, this burning desire that may not always feel like it's burning at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, end of the day, crazy chaos going on. But when that's always there to steer us, we know where we're going. We have a map.
I think
Crystal's-
definitely.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, definitely listen to yesterday's episode, because we dove into that a lot about how to even set up your environment to have more discipline and so on. So I think that will be helpful.
For sure.
Crystal said, should your daily step count include your cardio? I say yes.
Hell yeah.
Why would it not? It's part of your daily movement. It's part of your daily activity, of course. It should. I think people, especially runners, feel like their run shouldn't count towards their steps. So if you're of that mindset, I would just encourage you to make sure you're still getting up at least every hour or so. Like, don't go for a 10-mile run in the morning and then sit on your butt the whole rest of the day. But it all counts toward your daily steps, and just having that consistent movement throughout the day too is still super important. Allison said, what are your thoughts? We did this one. Sorry. Josh threw me off. Brittany said, which exercises would you recommend if someone suffers from sciatic pain? I'm seeing a chiro and a pelvic floor PT already to help. I'm 2.5 months postpartum. Should I be building up my glutes more to help, or no? Glutes are never a bad idea, ever. Not
just
I think it's great that she's working with a chiro and a pelvic floor PT. I think it can definitely be helpful there. This would also potentially be a great question for Tom and Robin on the athletic training side of things. From what I understand, things like pelvic tilts can be really helpful. Piriformis stretch, even something like cat-cows, and just getting some movement back there to help with spinal mobility, I think will be helpful. And building glute strength, I think, could definitely be helpful. But I would say this isn't our main specialty, and I would default to someone whose specialty is PT or athletic training.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll tag Tom and Robin in to answer this one specifically. Madison said, does each program in the app progress off of the previous month? So for example, is it better to stick with one program for multiple months in a row if they build off each other, or is it fine to stick to one program for 1 month and then switch to a different program of your preference? Thanks, and echoing others here, you guys are the best. We thank you, Madison. I think at the end of the day, I would like to have you stick to one program for at least a few months at a time, except if like life changes and let's say you got a whole new schedule change and you can only commit to maybe 3 days this month and you used to be able to do 5 days. That would be a great time to switch. But ultimately, I would like you stick to the same program for at least 3 to 6 months at minimum before you switch to something just based off of preference or like wanting to try something new.
I would agree.
Okay, Nikki said, hi, I'm usually long-winded, so I'm going to try my best not to be. She's currently 12 weeks pregnant with her 4th child, and she asked for prayers.
Bless.
This is her first pregnancy where she's been really consistent with strength training specifically. Her main goal this time around is to preserve as much muscle as she can and make postpartum movement as easy as possible. Love that. A little background, her nutrition before she got pregnant, she was lifting regularly, but not in a macro tracking phase. Once she found out she was pregnant, she wanted to make sure she was eating enough to support preserving that muscle mass. So she started tracking and estimated her maintenance calories using our macro guide, which is on our website and is a free download for those who are interested in that. She's been doing that for about a month now, but she noticed that even though it's technically maintenance calories, it may have actually put her in a slight surplus compared to where she was prior, and she's nervous that she's feeling like she's gaining weight a bit too much too soon. So she said, number one, should she adjust macros at this point? Let's answer that first. I say no.
I say no. I think it's hard to assess. Like, I'm assuming you're saying, I think I'm in a surplus because I'm gaining weight.
Yeah.
You're pregnant. So
you're going to gain weight.
you're going to gain weight regardless.
And everybody gains differently. Like some people gain most of their weight in the first trimester. Other people don't gain a single pound until the third trimester. And you can't decide which person you want to be. It's just going to be what it is. So don't stress about that. Her second question, she said, as pregnancy progresses, I know you're not quote unquote eating for two and calories don't need to skyrocket, but to continue to preserve muscle, should she increase all of her macros slightly or just protein? It depends where you're at, I would say.
Yeah. I don't know what the starting point is. So that's a little tricky.
Because I would say it depends where you're at. And protein needs really don't need to be increased dramatically just because you're pregnant. Like that's more so based on your body weight and your amount of muscle mass that you have to start, even though you want to gain more. So it depends, but I would say likely you're going to increase all at least a little bit, just as a generic response. Number 3, she said, anything else I can do to make sure I keep muscle mass and aid in postpartum healing? Just continue to lift progressively is my
keep lifting
advice, which I know she's starting. And then she said she started the prenatal program at week 10. Can I combine 2 upper body days into 1? Should I omit anything? If so, because she doesn't want to add another day to her lifts. But I wouldn't like combine all of both into 1. I would pick maybe 1 or 2 from the second one and push it over to the first one. And that I think answers all of her questions. But yeah, you have to make the program fit your needs, so you can combine them, but just stick with the same amount of exercises per week.
You could also just like in one day bump the volume up, like the sets. If you're at 3, bump it to 4, so you're getting that additional volume in that single.
Yeah, you don't have to add more exercises per se. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Jess said, hello, I'm 21 weeks pregnant. Lots of pregnant questions this week. And I was just told that I need to avoid heavy lifting over 10 pounds and intense workouts for at least 4 weeks. Bummer. But she's looking for suggestions on alternative workouts. Do the Anywhere program in the app. So the Anywhere program is body weight and bands. And if you can't lift over 10 pounds, that probably is the only program. I mean, you could follow the other programs and just not lift over 10 pounds, but I would suggest that one for a little switch up until you can lift weights again, hopefully after 4 weeks.
She didn't give much context on
I don't know why
that was advised, and it doesn't sound like she's already 21 weeks in and she was just told that she needs to avoid heavy lifting. So I don't know if there was some sort of extenuating circumstance or like something that specifically happened that they're doing more monitoring or something, or maybe she's high risk and so that's why that was recommended. If nothing happened and that was recommended, I'm gonna gracefully say to ignore it.
Yeah.
But if obviously
it sounds like something,
my guess is something maybe happened that we don't have context on. So yeah, I mean, I think still things like, look, there's a ton of other ways to do workouts. So
even
maybe
if you
it
walk,
is body weight stuff, maybe it's just walking, maybe it's yoga, maybe it's Pilates, maybe it's a group fitness class where you're not lifting a ton of heavy weight, but you're still getting moving, still doing your cardio or your runs or anything like that. But yeah, I think you can absolutely still exercise. It sounds like you just might need to modify intensity a little bit.
Listen, if you're tired of the all or nothing cycles, the diet starts Monday, the I know what to do, I'm just not doing it feeling, we should probably talk. Our one-on-one online coaching isn't just about workouts and meal plans. It's about building something that actually fits your life. No cookie cutter templates, no guilt, just real coaching and real results. Plus, we've got a pretty big team, so we can even pair you with an expert who actually understands your lifestyle because they've gone through it too. If that sounds like what you've been missing, check out the link in the show notes to apply for coaching. Then we'll send you the link to book a free, no-obligation consult call with our team. There are no hard closes. We won't even take your credit card over the phone. You'll get the details to sign up on your own time. And more good news, we are in fact qualified for HSA FSA reimbursement. One last thing. We even offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you have nothing to lose. What are you waiting for? Spots are limited, so apply today. All right, let's get back to the show.
Okay. All right. Cecilia said, mommy wrist. Did either of you deal with mommy wrist postpartum? It's worse than my pelvic floor, affecting push-ups and various exercises. It's sore throughout the day and night. Not sure if there's specific movements, stretches you all recommend.
I got mommy wrist.
Why do you have mommy wrist?
I remember when I was carrying Cora every walk, I started getting it.
Yeah, it's very common. It's definitely something to just be aware of how you're carrying your baby, obviously, is the first thing, which you probably know. I feel like I might have had it a little bit with Kai, but I have not had it with Cora or Wes this go around. But it is it's painful. I would see a normal PT if you have not yet, and if it is sort of like you've been dealing with it for a while and it hasn't gone away, on top of just watching how you're positioning your wrist and then just omitting the exercises that do affect it negatively for right now until you do have some protocol in place to help it. But I think this is another one we probably have to tag in Robin and Tom that might be able to help more unless you have some Rex, Joelle.
Yeah, I remember Coach Sarah had this really bad, or maybe even for her, it was like carpal tunnel in her wrist, but I remember she had a ton of wrist issues. I remember having it very, very temporarily postpartum with Sloan, which for sure was related to just like how it was holding her. Obviously, not used to like first time postpartum mom, not used to like holding a baby all the time and like nursing all the time and holding their head. And I think I would just end up in these positions with my wrists. And one of the best things we could do, whether we're talking about holding the baby or we're talking about lifting, is keep the wrist in a really neutral position. I think, if we think about something like push-ups, she said were causing her pain, right? We think about kind of that hand position. We're in this very flexed wrist position versus if we can keep the wrist in a neutral position, even something like we might be shoulder pressing and our wrist might be like this when we're shoulder pressing. If you're not watching this might be difficult, but if we can flip that wrist into a more neutral position, we can hopefully avoid some of that pain while it passes. But I think a lot of that wrist pain is like overuse and not having your wrist in great position. So I would try to kind of audit the, positioning of your wrist to keep them more neutral. And then there could be some helpful things that Tom and Robin might have to say about like wrist flexor stretches and things like that to help.
Jamie said, tips on how to help a family member lower their cholesterol. My mother is in her 60s. She goes to the gym 3 times per week, strength trains, and does cardio often, mostly walking and the stairs. She eats very healthy, lots of lean meats, veggies. She doesn't eat a ton of salt or fat, and she does eat berries as fruit, sometimes half a banana and oatmeal. She thinks she should cut down on her meat or protein intake. Thoughts?
I don't necessarily know that she would need to like cut down on her meat or protein intake. Certainly like protein intake in general is not necessarily contributing. Maybe she might need to consider some leaner protein alternatives. The other thing that I would keep in mind, I think she mentioned something about fiber, right? Was that in here? Or she mentioned
She just said she eats fruits and veggies. A generally healthy diet, it sounds like.
Yeah, I would definitely keep a focus on soluble fiber. I know you mentioned she's eating fruits and veggies. I don't know that that necessarily means she's getting enough fiber. Adding something even like a Metamucil, which is like a psyllium husk supplement, could potentially be helpful. But encouraging a lot of soluble fiber can be really helpful because it will reduce the absorption of cholesterol in the digestive tract. So that could be helpful if we think like oats, oat bran, beans, lentils, fruits, vegetables generally are going to have a good amount of soluble fiber. So I would say that.
Keep moving. At
Keep
least
moving.
30 days. I know
Exercise.
as we get older, we tend to move less. Intensity tends to decline as well. But if she can do a brisk walk, that can help to raise HDL, lower LDL. I don't know if she's going to go all out with a HIIT session, but start with general walks and just take like a minute at a time to turn it into a power walk and see how far you guys can go. But seems to eat healthy, as already pointed out. If she has any weight to lose, that can help.
Yeah.
Continuing to cut out a lot of the highly processed stuff, limit alcohol significantly until it gets into a safer range. It's a lot of the same answers for a lot of these subjects, guys. It's the L5 method. It's paying more attention. It's being a little more strict. There are periods of time in life where we need to ebb and flow with how strict we need to be in regards to, are we generally healthy? And right now it's about moderation and balance, or are there some things we need to fix to get these markers back into a healthy range? So just some things to consider there. As far as supplements, just a quick run through. Berberine potentially could be helpful. I know Joelle mentioned psyllium husk, red yeast, rice, omega-3s, niacin, which is B3, could all potentially be helpful. But tracking the whole deal. I know we haven't talked about this in a while, but LDL itself isn't necessarily the bad guy. the ApoB tends to be that better risk predictor, and that's what actually carries it into the place that can be harmful and letting that plaque accumulate and the issues within the cardiovascular system. So get a full range of a bigger picture view on the health. Make sure we're optimizing lifestyle, potentially look into those supplements and pick a couple you think you could be deficient in, and see how things go.
I think that was the last question, unless any more rolled in. Let me refresh.
Pop that refresh. I think I saw a couple.
No, I think that was it, Josh.
All right, homies. Where can they find you?
I'm at Alessandra Skutnik.
Joelle Samantha.
At Josh Scott.
And everything else you need is linked in the show notes.